Hello, and welcome to the first session of our manager development program. In this session, we're going to predominantly go over our emergency action plan and policies and procedures, but we'll go over some of the job description and things like that as well. Caveat to this presentation is it was originally developed to be part of an actual manager training after managers were hired. So I think I have gone through and eliminated most of the things, but if there are dates or specific details to a semester that we're not currently in, please know that to ignore those or check with me and double check to make sure that you know what's expected of you moving forward through this manager development program, since you have not been hired as a manager yet. So the purpose of this presentation is to get you prepared to go through the manager development program. The information in this presentation is manager level education, and so the reason for that and why we want you to be intimately aware of our emergency action plan as well as our policies and procedures is you are ultimately going to shadow shifts this semester, and you may be acting in a manager role with a manager there. And so we need you to know our policies and procedures and emergency action so that you can't help with those. If we do have a true emergency, our manager is going to take over, since you're not in that role, and that would be acting out of the scope of your job. But we want you to know these things so that you can talk about them, so that you can talk through them with the managers and really get a feel for what it's like to be a manager while you are shadowing, rather than just watching the manager do their job. I mean, ultimately, you're going to be doing a lot of the managing tasks, and so that's why we need you to have this foundation. So the agenda for this presentation is I'm going to go through the position description for the manager. We are going to talk about our policies and procedures, some risk management protocols, so that's our emergency action plan. We're going to go through the department mission, vision, and values, as well as our program mission, vision, and values, because they're similar, but they are different. And all of this will lay the foundation for what you're ultimately going to do in this role as a member of this development program. And then it is really important that you are paying attention to this. This kind of will be the only time that you get this information this semester. So make sure that if you have questions, you're holding on to those to ask me so that we can talk about them in a discussion session, and also giving this presentation your undivided attention. If you need to step away from your computer for any reason, please pause the presentation, do what you need to do, and come back to it, rather than just letting this play in the background and hoping that you absorb things while you're multitasking. This is not a presentation. It's dense, and so it's not going to be something you can absorb while you're doing other work. Plus, you're getting paid for this, and ultimately, because we are paying for you, we would like your undivided attention through this presentation. All right, so let's discuss the job description. I'm not going to read every single line to you, and if you do want one of these printed out, I can get that to you, or I can email you the full job description. So if you want to read the whole thing word for word, please go ahead and pause the video once I'm done with the slide, and you can read the things. But really what I wanted to highlight are the things that most managers do on a vast majority of their shifts. And so those are highlighted bold in orange. And so really one of the main things that I'm, as a manager, if you're hired into that position, you're going to be providing a strong leadership example to all of our intramural sports program employees, whether that's another manager that's working or the officials that are playing. You're going to supervise our sports and events and the officials while our programs are operating. So I won't say never. Most of the time, we do not operate in intramural sports without a staff member there. We do have some play-by tournaments, such as tennis, where we schedule matches. The players coordinate times to play, and they go ahead and do that on their own. We're not there, and they just report the scores. And then we also have our video game tournaments online, but for the vast majority of our programming is supervised by an intramural manager. Now, hopefully with that said, personnel management, conflict resolution, event supervision, and customer service are in line with our policies and procedures. So while you're supervising, it is our expectation that you are managing our officials. You're not just letting them do whatever they want. If conflict arises and it necessitates a manager stepping in, you would be the one doing that. You're making sure our facilities and everything are playable and things like that. You're also going to respond to and deal appropriately with all conflicts, right? So if we have a conflict, it doesn't mean you hear something erupts, you step in right away. We want to let our officials work, but if something escalates to where it necessitates a manager being present, That'll be your role. And then because officials are not in our emergency action plan, they don't have a role in it. All injuries are going to be handled by a manager. So as an official, you don't have to have CPR, AED, or first aid training. As a manager, you will. If you are hired into that role, we'll talk more about that. But that's why you're going to be responding to those injuries. Again, while you're shadowing, you're going to step back if there is an injury and let a manager handle that because it's within the scope of their job. But you would be handling a lot of the other stuff during that shift that doesn't need a certification. You're going to make sure score sheets and all other appropriate forms are completed after each contest. And so as an official, you are used to getting done with your game, handing your score sheet to the manager, and then moving on to the next game. As a manager, you need to make sure that everything is filled out correctly, that the teams, we have a team total for each team. We know who won. Those are circled. Write-ins are legible. If a write-in isn't legible, we need to stop immediately. To be able to get to that person, get to that official and ask them about their handwriting. Otherwise, it might be a nightmare in the office the next day. And then we also need to make sure that sportsmanship is done and things like that. So it's really important that you're not just, as a manager, taking a score sheet and putting it away, but you need to be taking that score sheet and making sure that it's filled out appropriately before you put it away. Ultimately, a manager is an extension of Adam and I on shift. And so it's really important that you have critical thinking, problem solving skills within the limits. So think about it as a river. We set the banks in the direction of the water. You're going to make all the decisions of navigating that river on your shift. So it's important that you think through things. You use your tools as a manager if you're hired into that role to make these decisions. We hire managers to do that job so that at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday night, I'm not getting a call to ask a question. It's always okay to call me, but we want to make sure that you have a pretty good handle of what's expected of being a manager in that role. Ultimately, we want you to feel like we have confidence in your judgment, and we do. So if you are chosen to be a manager, there's the reason why is because we think you can handle that responsibility, and you're never going to get in trouble for making the wrong decision. If you make an incorrect decision, we're going to talk about what your thought process was, how you arrived at that answer to the question that was posed or whatever the situation that arose, and then what we would like you to do differently in the future. We will probably use it as a teaching moment for all of our staff or all of our managers, but you're not going to get in trouble for making the wrong decision. We trust you. We hired you for that role, and we want you to trust yourself and make those decisions. So next I'm going to go over our department employee manual. So this is all of our overarching policies for Campus Rec for all of our employees. And later on, we'll go over our intramural sports manual as well. So to start, this is our department mission, vision, and value. These were just reworked in the winter of 2019. So our mission for campus recreation is that we promote healthy lifestyles by offering quality programs, facilities, and services to the CSU community in order to foster personal growth, leadership development, and student success in an environment that embraces individual differences. Every decision that we make as a department is going to go back to these mission, vision, and values, and so every decision we make as an intramural sports program is also going to fall back to these. So our vision is we empower every member of the CSU community to pursue their lifelong well-being through recreation. Okay, well-being has a lot of different facets. There are a lot of reasons why people participate in intramural sports, and at our foundation, we are a recreational offering, and so our ultimate goal is to help people pursue their lifelong well-being and set those good habits up for the future. Our values, you should for sure know at least 3 of these because they're printed on all of our shirts, and as new employees start, we will start rolling into having all 4 of our values printed on there because we did add a value. So inclusion is our new value. We lived by it prior, and so we decided to make it a value. So we welcome, value, and affirm our diverse students, participants, and staff, and strive to offer intentional and socially just recreational opportunities. We also, integrity is a value, so we hold ourselves and each other accountable by ensuring our actions align with our policies. Our community is we cultivate an environment of collaboration, support, and connection. And then development, we support the whole person in a learning-centered environment focused on meaningful exercises, self-discovery, and leadership. And this one is also very important. We want to set you up to be successful at whatever is next. We understand that you likely may not go into the recreation field, especially you may not be pursuing a career in intramural sports, and so we want to make you the best professional at what you're going to do after college, and we will help in any way that we can. Here's our organizational chart. So this is our entire department and how something that's important and does happen about once or twice a year is we enact workers' compensation. So if anyone is ever injured on the job, whether that's an official or you as a manager, not an official getting hurt playing, if they're not actually on the clock. But if someone gets hurt on the clock, we need to fill out an injury report form on our iPad and then let me know immediately after that so that I can start the process for workers' compensation if our employee wants to go that route. So you all are covered by that. You may never work more than 40 hours in a week. During the school year, it will be very hard to get 40 hours. This note is in there for mostly the summer. However, intramurals doesn't run a lot during the summer, so we should never really get here. But this is also a combination between all campus employment. So ultimately, Colorado State University is your employee, even though you work for Campus Rec. So if you work somewhere else on campus and within intramural sports, those two jobs cannot sum to more than 40 hours in a week. There are mandatory department trainings and meetings. You have been to those before. That's rec ramp up, all staff development if you fall into the category that's required, and then all of our training. So football, basketball, and officiating techniques are required by managers actually, and then all of the other ones all of our other league sports are required, but there is an excusal policy for that, which we'll go over a little bit later. And then you also are responsible for having an emergency cert, and then also the duty of care within the guidelines of those certifications. So you have to have these to be a manager, and they cannot lapse. So once you have them, make sure that you're paying attention to your expiration dates and getting that renewed before the next one, and I will also help with those dates as well. There are some opportunities within the department for more professional development. So we have CRAB, which is our Campus Rec Advisory Board. There are student employees, student participants, faculty, staff who use our facility and our programs, as well as professional staff within the department that are on this board to help make global decisions. So when we went from a team fee to our membership policy that we have now, where you buy a membership for the whole semester, that went through CRAB to make sure that all of our students were okay with that. There's also other opportunities for development within the department. Student Leadership Series is actually dated, so that's old. We are revamping what rec development looks like, and then once that rolls out, you will know how you can develop within our department. There's also standing committees. So every year there's a student employment, student staff development, employee appreciation, inclusivity, and service, and students can serve on those. So if you have interest in finding out how Campus Rec works a little bit more globally than just intramural sports, these are great opportunities if you want your say in how students develop within our department, how they're appreciated, things like that. Talk to me about these opportunities. And then there's search committees. So every time that there is a vacancy, there is a student who serves on the search. And so if there are any of those opportunities that come up, we will let you all know. There are also external opportunities that you can participate in through Campus Rec. And so there are local, state, regional, and national professional conferences. You can apply for development money to help you get to those and pay for your registration or your travel if there is no registration. We've had students in the past go to NERSA, which is our national conference that happens annually. We've had students use this fund to get to regional and national tournaments in order to officiate. So there's obviously no registration to go officiate, but we would pay for the flight for you to get there if you did take advantage of that opportunity. There's also other training and cert programs within the department, within campus, and there's also seminars, classes, workshops. Basically, if you think that something will help you professionally develop and there's a monetary fee associated with it, talk to me and we can do our best to try to get some funding help for that. We do expect all campus rec staff, whether that's student or professional staff, to have a membership if they're going to use the facility. And additionally, we expect you to have a membership if you're going to play. So this really only comes into play in the summer because a lot of people don't take classes and don't pay student fees over the summer. If you would like to use the facility as a participant and recreate within the facility, you need to either buy a full membership, buy the day membership, whatever the case is, you need to have an active membership at that time. That also goes for professional staff members. Just for reference, Adam and I both buy our memberships every year. We pay monthly to have a campus recreation membership, and then if we participate in intramural sports, we buy that as well. So that is our expectation of all of our staff. You should never be accessing the facility to work out through the back hallway. You need to scan in every time that you come to the facility in order to do that. We also do not provide parking for shifts. You've probably already figured that out as an official, so that you can park either in Moby, if it's after their hours, the pay to park spots, Morgan Library. Those are all the areas to park, but please do make sure that you are paying attention to schedules, especially basketball, volleyball schedules. Moby does go pay to park during those times, and so you should be using a different lot during that time. Customer service and professionalism, we always talk about this within intramural sports, but it's very important for the department as well. So you ultimately are a customer service representative, right? People are going to come to you with praise and with problems, and we need to handle those accordingly. You're going to have an iPad with you that has internet access. If you have questions on certain things, you should be able to use that to find answers. And then because you will have the technology, we want to make sure that you're using that professionally. So make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing on those things. If you have friends or acquaintances or people you know that come up and talk to you during work, make sure that the conversations are brief, that they're appropriate, that whatever you're talking about can be talked about at work. There are times that people will walk up to you and they'll want to just have a friendly chat about what happened over the weekend. If you're on the clock, make sure that whatever that discussion is work appropriate. And if it's not, just let them know that you'll have that conversation with them after. Just keep in mind there are always eyes on you when you're working. Make sure that you're representing yourself, our program, the department, and the university well. We do sometimes get notifications of people acting inappropriately, and they didn't even know anyone was eavesdropping or anything like that. You need keys and an iPad for every shift that you work, and so you will get those at the front desk. You will need your student ID to check those out. Those need to be checked in by the person who checked them out. Okay, there are going to be certain things that we can pass off. Keys are not one of those. If you lose a key, it is tied to your ID, so we don't want to pass those on, because if manager A checks out the key, manager B takes it from them and loses it, manager A is still responsible for that key. Okay. You also, excuse me, you also need to make sure that you are checking that in physically to a membership attendant, not just leaving it on the counter and hoping someone checks it in for you. You can use the student staff break room where you clock in the rec. You can use the lockers during your shift. So you will be coming to the rec every time. That's where you'll be clocking in, unless you're trading off with someone just for an hour or whatever the case is. And you're just going right to a facility that has a clock. But for the most part, you will clock in at the rec every time that you come to work. You can also use my office to place stuff, but it is not secure. I do not lock my doors, so if stuff goes missing, we are not responsible for it. So the best place to make sure that your stuff is secure is to put it in a locker in the break room and lock it. The cleanliness of that break room is really important, whether you're using it just to clock in or you're using it to eat really quickly before a shift, whatever the case is, you need to clean up after yourself. A lot of students use that facility or that room, and we need to make sure that it's good for everyone. Once a year, we will be responsible for cleaning it for a month. It rotates through every area within the department that has students, so we will talk about that when it's our month to clean it. And then please, please, please refrain from changing your clothes in the break room. There's bathrooms in the lobby where you can do that. You can enter the facility, you can go to the locker rooms. But because everyone has access to that room, it's not a private room, it's not a changing room. You will have a phone when you're on shift. It should be used for work purposes only, right? So that's calling EMS, calling or texting an official who's late or finding a cover, or asking me a question or looking something up. Those are the only times you should have your phone out. It's a privilege to have your phone. Our officials do not get to have their phone out. So please don't use your phone for things that we don't want our officials to be using it for. So things in the past, we've had managers live stream games that they're missing because of a shift. If you really care that much about the game, find someone to cover it, watch it from the comfort of your own home. It's going to be more fun that way. But you make it impossible for you to enforce our policies if you break them. So really, really, really make sure that you're using your phone for work only. And then if you ever have to answer one of our phones, you're just going to answer it with campus recreation, intramural sports, your name, and then how can I help you? Be sure to always be professional over the radios and keep conversations to a work-related items also, because you don't know who's listening. There are at any time maybe 25 radios out, and so if you are talking to one other person, there are 24 other people that are listening to you. So make sure that whatever you're discussing over the radio is appropriate. You're not talking about you're not using names of like maybe a participant who's hurt, things like that. Okay, if we are in an emergency situation and you are not involved in the emergency, you need to maintain radio silence until that emergency is over. The rec soup will get on the radio and let everyone on staff know when we can use the radios again. But if we're out at the football fields and we need pennies from one field bank to another, it's not the time to use a radio during an emergency to ask. You'll just have to either use your phone because you both will have them, or just or just go get the pennies and come back. Okay, so if you're going to use the radio first, you need to listen to make sure no one's currently using it. You're going to use the large button on the side. You're going to press it before speaking. Give it about a 1.5 to 2 count before you start talking. If you press and start talking at the same time, the first several words of your transmission will not go through. So press, hold, pause, and then you're going to state, I am manager, your name, to whoever you are trying to reach. So that's, I am manager Matt to I am manager Adam, and then wait for a response, or rec soup, whatever the case is. Wait for the response, have your conversation. When the conversation is over, you're going to say, Matt clear, Adam clear, whatever your name is clear. When you're done using it, that signifies to everybody else in the department that has a radio that now they can use that radio. If you call someone several times and they don't answer, you're going to say no contact, your name clear, so that everyone again knows that they can start using the radio again. If you are ever approached by anybody for an interview, whether it's for a class or an official publication, you should not and cannot, as a campus recreation employee, be talking to them. That goes for managers, officials. All of that communication needs to go through our marketing department, and that also includes our participants. So if someone's out there trying to do a story about a team, we need to make sure that they have the permission, and Adam or I will let you know that it's been approved if that's the case. So we will have our marketing students that are out and about taking pictures and video. They will be in uniform. They are okay. If someone is wearing a media pass from Campus Recreation, they have been approved. Or if you know from Adam or I that someone will have a camera or a recording device and will be taking pictures or doing an interview, we will let you know. If you have not been told they're not in uniform or they don't have a media pass, please ask them to stop. Give them Lauren Branch's information as the Assistant Director of Marketing and Communications, and they need to go through him. They cannot finish that night and then ask for permission. They need to wait until they have that permission. As a department, we have a commitment to diversity and inclusion. Again, this is a really heavy, word heavy slide, so I want you to pause it to read the whole thing. I'm not going to read the entire thing, but for CSU's non-discrimination policy, it's very broad, and then campus recreations policy is even broader. So our ultimate goal is to serve anybody that wants to use our programs and facilities, and we work really hard to reach people that we're not already reaching. So if you have any questions or interest in trying to program for a group or reach a different population that you don't think we're reaching, please let us know. But now's a great time to pause and read this slide. Here are some other policies for campus recreation. You took a sexual harassment and awareness course when you were first hired, so all employees are required to complete that. Any member of the university community who believes that he, she, or they have been subject to sexual harassment should immediately report that incident to the supervisor, which is me. And then I will report that to the Office of Equal Opportunity and request advice on how to handle that. It does happen, unfortunately, and so please know that I am someone that you can come to. There will be no judgment on my side. We will just get you the tools and resources on campus that best serve you. Additionally, you all are responsible employees. So when you are on the clock, if you are managing or officiating and you are on the clock getting paid, if you hear about anybody who is involved in harassment, sexual misconduct, sexual harassment, or sexual violence, you have to report that to me. It's not an option. It's not I don't know if it's trustworthy. Anything that you hear within your job, whether it's a participant or an employee, if you hear it and you are on the clock, you have to report it to me. It's a little bit different when you're not on the clock. You can use Tell Someone, and that's a hotline on campus. And both of these policies are not to get anyone in trouble. It's to get people the services that they need or that could help them. Once this is reported, someone from campus will reach out to that person who it was reported about, and then they have the option to engage the resources on campus or not. But we have to report any type of harassment, sexual misconduct, sexual harassment, or sexual violence. As a CSU employee, you are required to do that, and you're required to tell me, and then I am required to then also move that up the chain with the university. Tell Someone is a great resource for you as a human on campus. If you hear of any peers or friends when you're not on the clock that are experiencing anything from a change in mood, maybe there's something going on at home, there's some depression, there's anything that's happening, anyone in a mental health crisis, please use Tell Someone. They will reach out, like a trained professional to reach out to your friends or acquaintances, whoever you're reporting about, and try to get them the help that is available to them. So again, not to punish anyone, but just to be a resource that you can use to make sure that you're caring for your fellow Rams. We also understand that sometimes employees are going to engage in consensual relationships. That is okay. As a manager, if you choose to date somebody else on staff, that's fine. We just need to know about it so that if an issue arises, we had prior knowledge. If you do end up dating someone within the program, we are going to make sure that you're not scheduled together, that you're not directly responsible for them on shift. And so these are things we need to know. It's not bad. It's just to protect the both of you to make sure that you are protected. So if you do engage in one of those relationships, please let me know so that we can take the appropriate measures. So now I'm going to cover our intramural employee manual. So before was our overarching campus rec policies, and then these are our intramural specific policies. Each area within the rec has their own manual in addition to the manual that the campus rec has. So here is a more detailed view of our arm. Adam is obviously the assistant director. I'm the coordinator. I report to Adam. Adam oversees our office managers, and I have So they directly report to Adam, but I have supervision over them. Same with our intern. I oversee the intern, and then indirectly they oversee office managers if they overlap in the office. Going into fall 20, we do not have an intern, but this is something we've done. We had a post-grad year-long internship several years ago, and now we do semesterly internships. So if you are interested in an internship, please talk to me. There are extra duties that we have that you can gain that experience. We also obviously have managers, which is the position that you just received, and then our officials. So there's indirect oversight from you as a manager to the officials, but ultimately they report to me. But when you're on shift, you supervise them. If we have an intern, they will indirectly supervise managers, but are directly supervised by me. These are really important numbers that you should have in your phone as a manager. SafeWalk is a program on campus. Hopefully you've heard about it, but it's at any point if someone from sundown to sunup, if someone's uncomfortable walking on campus, or I think it's a 3-block radius off of campus, some safety officers will walk with you. This is really important for you to know and for you to be able to give to our employees, because oftentimes we get out extremely late in the evening, 11:30 at night, and so if someone would like we want to do our best to leave at the same time after our shifts, but then we understand because parking is so limited on campus, people are going to go in a lot of different areas, and some people are just going to walk home. So we want to make sure that everyone's safe. So SafeWalk is an option. There's a non-emergency line for the campus police department if you're dealing with an issue that's not an emergency, but you could use someone to come talk to an unruly fan or an unruly participant, anything like that. Use the non-emergency line. Adam's cell phone, my cell phone is really important. I'm your first point of contact during a shift. If you have a question, if you can't get a hold of me, it's Adam. The rec soup is also on there. So if you have something you need to discuss with the rec soup, it's not urgent, or maybe it shouldn't be over the radio. You have that phone number. Each rec soup carries that phone during shift, and I hand that phone off. So it's a great way to get a hold of the rec soup. The intramural sports office, this number is right there too. And then the front desk, this is for the membership desk. If you somehow lights didn't go on, you have issues with sprinklers, whatever the case is, sprinklers should actually go to rec soup. But if you have issues with anything else or you need to talk to someone from the membership desk, that's a great phone number. We don't give that out to the public, so if you do want to give the phone number for campus rec, go ahead and look that up and give that to somebody. Then there's a full option list that they can navigate, but this is the one that'll get you directly there if you're on shift. So go ahead, pause this, make sure that these are programmed into your phone because you will need them in the future. Obviously, if you want to get paid, you need to clock in and out. Your pay schedule won't change. It's the same for all hourly employees on campus. So if you have another job on campus, you'll still receive your paychecks every other week for the 2 weeks prior to that. So every 2 weeks you get work, you get paid 2 weeks later. If there's an error or you think that there was an error in your paycheck, please contact me immediately so that we can discuss that. As you know, all of our scheduling is done through When to Work. You know that once the schedule is published, it's on you. Something that's a little bit different with managers is monthly. We will schedule for the following month, and you all will pick your shifts. You'll be able to pick from managing and officiating shifts, but please know that you need to keep your availability up to date, because if we are short on officials on a day, I have to schedule managers. So you can pick up some officiating shifts, but there are times where you didn't pick up an officiating shift, but you get assigned one because we need the help. So please, please, please make sure that you are staying up to date on that. Again, the sub policy, you all as managers need to cover each other. We do this pretty well as a managing group, so that's awesome. The tough piece is, as a manager, if you are not assigned to a tournament shift, you are not assigned to the training. And so if you are someone who needs a tournament shift covered, someone from that training needs to cover you. And so there are times where maybe there's only 3 or 4 managers that are going to work a tournament over a weekend. That's the pool that can cover and trade shifts. Or if you know in advance that you need someone to cover you, you can have them come to the training so that they can cover you, or they can make the training up by watching the video. The uniform code is really important because you now need to enforce this. You need to make sure that you are in uniform every time you're on shift, because if someone is out of uniform, we need a shift doc relayed to me through the iPad. So you all as managers need to have wear your shirt. You are now in charge of laundering that shirt. Your lime green shirt you'll be issued. You can get up to two short sleeves, or you get 2 shirts. So 2 short sleeves or 1 long sleeve, 1 short sleeve. You cannot have 2 long sleeves. And then if you are going to be outside or in the IPF where it's cold during the winter, we have intramural jackets. Those need to be checked out from the the equipment desk. Those jackets are shared with sport clubs, so that we may not have the exact size you want, but you need to have one of those on the outside, or your shirt worn over any layers, so that you are easily identifiable when you're out there. If you are just leaving the rec to go to Moby, please don't check out a jacket, because there are going to be sport club and other intramural staff that need jackets. And if you're doing it just to walk across the parking lot, wear your personal jacket, leave that in a cage so that you have your work shirt on once you're in there. You will be issued a name tag. That name tag needs to be worn at all times so that people know who you are. If your name tag either gets weathered or tattered or anything and you need a new label, please let me know. I'll get one printed for you. For the bottoms that you wear with your lime green shirt, your pants or shorts must be neat and either athletic or khaki type pants or shorts. So black athletic pants is the same as the officials, no other colors, no blue, no gray, anything like that, or khaki pants or shorts. As a department, we do not allow jeans of any kind, so no black jeans or anything like that. Sweatpants are also not allowed, so warm-ups are fine, but like cotton sweatpants with elastic waistbands and elastic ankles are not allowed for any staff in intramural sports. And then our officials are required to wear their black athletic shorts or pants while they're officiating. If they're not in black, we need to make sure that there's a shift doc. Hats must be worn forward and can only be worn during outdoor events, and they need to be black, white, or CSU design. So if you as a manager would like to wear a hat, make sure that it fits in there and you're not wearing it inside, so that we can also make sure that we are holding our officials accountable to that. During cold weather, stocking caps can be worn, but the same kind of policy. It needs to look professional, and so it's either a CSU or a plain hat can be worn. Athletic shoes need to be worn by you all and by our officials. So closed-toed athletic shoes, whatever our participants can play in, is what we need to wear. The only exception to this is sand volleyball. You can wear whatever shoes you want because you're going to be in the sand, and also tube water polo. If you're not wearing shoes in the pool, that's okay. So again, we talked about cell phones. It's a privilege for you to have a cell phone on shift. If that privilege is taken away from you because you choose to violate our cell phone policies, then I can no longer schedule you as a manager, because you have to have your phone on you to be able to call officials if they're late, to call EMS, and if you lose that privilege, you can no longer manage. So make sure that you're using your phone appropriately. No music, personal music should be played, so no headphones or anything like that. We do have our Bluetooth speakers, so you can either use the Pandora that's loaded on the iPads for those speakers, or you can connect your phone as long as your music is clean. We also want to try to stay away from holiday-based music, because not everyone celebrates the same holidays and things like that. So any type of music is fine as long as there's no cussing, and especially around the holidays, we want to stay away from that kind of stuff too. You will be evaluated once a semester. So in our fall semester, you'll get a 360 evaluation. In the spring, it'll be a self-evaluation. But you will also be charged with evaluating our officials. So each semester, you'll be assigned 3 to 4 officials to deliver a 30-minute evaluation. We're going to be changing that evaluation a little from when you went through it. There'll be a self-evaluation, so the conversation should be that they have an evaluation sheet that they filled out with them. You have what the managers filled out, and then it's a back and forth conversation. In addition to the 3 or 4 that you are assigned to evaluate, you'll be assigned to provide written evaluations on 3 to 4 more officials. So that ensures that we have data on everybody on staff. And so your 3 to 4 officials that you're delivering, you'll get feedback on them from your peers. You will compile all of that and then deliver that evaluation. So it's not just your opinion, it's the managing team's opinion. These are only as good as you all make them. So the more evaluation feedback you give to your fellow managers, the easier it is for them to compile and deliver those evaluations. So we really need buy-in from everyone on this. You know, we have a violation points system. So here's our points. Again, you do not give these out. You give me a shift documentation that relays information, and then I give these out. If you would like to know what our policies or what each point value is, please pause and read these thoroughly. You should know these as an employee, but again, you are not assessing these. It's a good thing to have. So if someone says, hey, how many points do you think Matt is going to give me for this? Or how many, I know I was late, how many points is that? You should know these, but again, you're not giving them out. And then please pay special attention. We've changed these just about every semester over the last 4 years to try to accommodate our staff as much as possible. So the more communication an official has with us, meaning me if they can't make it to a shift or you if they're running late, the better their point total may end up. But again, we need that communication to be able to try to work with someone. So go ahead, pause this and read through it, and then pay special attention to that we have without proper notice and with notice, and we'll go into that in the next slide. So these are our points continued to 2, 1, and 0 points. And so notice is defined as contacting the appropriate staff at least 4 hours prior to a shift start time with proper documentation when applicable. So if someone can't make a shift, if they let me know 4 hours before, at least 4 hours before the shift, I then have the opportunity to try to find a cover. They're still going to get points because they're calling in last minute and they didn't find a cover for themselves, but they're not going to get 5 points as a no-call, no-show. They're going to get 3 points. If someone is sick and they have a doctor's note, it's going to really help out their points. If they're legitimately sick, they let us know before at least 4 hours prior to the shift, and they have the doctor's note. There's no points associated with that, but they have to have that documentation from a doctor saying that they were sick. We do not need to reach 10 points to terminate an employee, and so we hate having to do this. We really try everything we possibly can. Like I said earlier, when you are making decisions, we're going to have a conversation after the fact about why you made the decision. Same thing, if an employee is consistently underperforming, we're going to have a conversation first about why that is, what we can do, how we can help. All of those conversations are going to happen first before we let someone go. But these policies are here just in case. We want to do our best to make sure that we are retaining good employees and building up employees that might be missing the mark to be good employees. But these are the reasons that someone could be terminated before reaching 10 points. For any points that are associated, like if you're writing an official up, you're relaying information to me, the official's getting argumentative, maybe they're near 10 points and they're afraid of their employment, let them know that anything that I give them can ultimately be appealed. So again, you're not giving the points out, you're just letting me know about something, and then just tell them, like, when Matt emails you with this, if he assigns you points, you can appeal those, and there is an appeal process. So that's really important for you to know. That may help diffuse a situation with an employee if they're upset that you're writing them up and trying to get you not to write them up because they're close to termination or whatever the case is. There is an appeal process to that. We talk about this all the time. You all participate. We love it. We want people to participate. Intramurals are awesome. They're super fun. They're a great way to exercise. They're a great way to be with your friends, to compete at the sport that you enjoy or you want to learn. But again, you are a manager now, whether you're wearing a managing shirt, whether you're wearing stripes, or whether you're playing or watching. So anytime that you are around intramural sports from now on, you are a manager, and that's how our staff is going to see you. And if we have issues with your participation, that's how I'm going to see you. So it's going to be really hard for you to diffuse situations in the future if you act like a yahoo when you're playing. So please, 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 if you are playing, make sure that you're acting appropriately and you are actively trying to get your team to do the same. We understand that you may end up playing with hotheads. My advice would be don't. If you know someone is a hothead, find a different team or ask them, don't invite them to be on your team. But ultimately, you can't control other people. As long as you are trying to calm someone down, that's what we need. But if you have someone on your team who blows up at an official or a manager and you're not doing anything to try to diffuse that situation, we're going to have a conversation about why that was and what you can do in the future. So just make sure you're doing that from the jump so that we don't have to have that conversation. All right, so we are going to move into policies and procedures. This is what we expect our participants to adhere to. So everything that we've been discussing is internal for staff, and then this is going to be external, and you're going to ultimately have to enforce these with the participants if it escalates to get to you, or we can be proactive with some of these things as well. So our IM mission, right? We already talked about our campus recreation mission. This is our intramural program mission. So Campus Rec's intramural sports program seeks to engage the CSU community through opportunities to participate in any number of structured, inclusive, recreational sporting activities throughout the academic year with an emphasis on and philosophy of responsible participation. So you'll see those 4 words that are, or 3 words in a phrase that are highlighted: structured, inclusive, recreational, responsible participation. So everything, all the decisions that we make within intramural sports come back to this. Those 4 statements is kind of how we frame what we put forward in the product that we create. And then so all of our rules, policies, and staff are in place to make sure that those happen. So structured, we have an ID policy, right? We need to see a photo ID for every participant to make sure that who is on the score sheet is who is playing. We have a forfeit rule to make sure that people are on time, to make sure that people are checking in and doing what they're supposed to. Any player who writes in and is not on the roster within 2 business days at 5 p.m., that team's going to receive a default. That's, again, to make sure that the people that are playing in our sports are supposed to be there. They're eligible. They're not on another team. They don't go to a different school, whatever the case is. Those that are eligible for intramural sports are anyone that can buy a membership. Okay, so full-time CSU students pay their student fees. That gets them access to the rec center. That gives them their rec membership. Then they can buy the intramural membership on top of that. Part-time students can buy a rec membership and then an intramural membership. Same thing with faculty, staff, spouses, and affiliates with a current a current campus recreation membership can buy the intramural membership. And then affiliates. So the biggest thing is you have to have a campus recreation membership in order to buy an intramural membership. We also have sportsmanship ratings, so at the end of every game as an official, you rated the sportsmanship of the players that were on the field. That's also one of the ways that we make sure we have structured events and you can't just act however you want. So our leagues and divisions are different. Our leagues are now open, which any gender can play. Co-ed, there's going to be a specific sport gender breakdown, and then women's and men's. We no longer do competitive and recreational leagues within those because we split, for our larger sports, we split into A and B brackets. But what we found is we had teams that should have been in competitive playing recreational, and then we had recreational having to play competitive because they didn't get the registration done in time. So now we just have one league for the sport for either men's, women's, co-ed, and or open, and then we break it up if it's a large enough sport. And so any player can only participate in a gendered and a co-ed league. So you can't play on 2 men's teams, you can't play on 2 women's teams, you can't play on 2 co-ed teams, you can't play on 2 open teams. So co-ed and open in the intramural system are registered like a gendered sport. So you can play in one of those plus your gender. So if you want to play 2 nights a week in a sport, play co-ed and then play your gender identity. Okay, we also have divisions. Those are the day and time that someone plays in our larger sports like flag football. There's going to be a Monday at 6:30, 7:30. That's the division. So additionally, in our leagues for our gender policies, individuals should be permitted to participate in intramural sports and events in accordance with that person's asserted public gender identity. So this is really important. If someone says that they are checking in as a male or a female, however they are checking in, that's what we're going to go with. the way that they present is not important to us. So we don't want you to have those conversations with anybody. If we have someone who seems to be maybe identifying differently from night to night based on their team's needs, like we have a co-ed football game and a team's going to forfeit because they don't have enough of one gender, and someone's like, oh, well, that's my gender, so now we're good and we can play. Let the game go, let them play. We in the office may have to have a conversation with that team, but likely we are just going to let people play in their asserted gender identity. It's not for us to question, but if someone's going back and forth, we need to know about that. Or you perceive someone is maybe abusing our policy, please don't feel like you have to have a conversation that night. Just let us know, and we will handle it in the office appropriately. We talked about our ID policy. This is a little bit more in depth, right? No ID, no play, no exceptions. That has not changed. What has changed over the last couple of years is what ID has to be presented. If someone's name appears on a roster, we need a state-issued photo ID or their CSU ID. Either one will work if their name is printed on the roster. If they are a write-in, meaning that their name is not on the roster, they need their CSU ID. The reason for the difference is if someone's on the roster, we know they have a membership because they cannot join the roster without a membership. Okay, they sign in, it pulls their membership data. If their name's not printed on there, we haven't pulled that membership data, and so we need a CSU ID because that at least says that they're eligible to buy an IM membership. And then if they haven't done that yet, they need to by that 5 p.m. 2 business day deadline. So state issued IDs are going to be passports, driver's license, state IDs, military IDs. We're not taking library cards. We're not taking anything like that. Like it's a CSU ID or a state issued ID, and make sure that you can read it. So if someone has a passport from a foreign government and you can't read it, you can't verify that the name on the roster is their name, we don't need to take that, but do everything you can to make sure that if someone's presenting you a state or a state issued ID, that you're double checking that and they can play if they're printed on the roster when we print rosters. We already talked about write-ins. You all have done it as officials. As a manager, you need to make sure that it's the complete first name, complete last name, and it's the right team. So these are the things that we're looking for when we get the score sheet at the end of the game from the officials, that it's not just initials, it's not just last name, it's not just first name, it's legible. If you can't read it, ask the officials, likely going to be able to decipher their letters, but if we get it in the office the next day, sometimes it's hard to track our officials down. So people can write in for leagues until the playoffs, and they can, we extended our deadline, our roster deadline for tournaments through the first day of competition if it's not in bracket play. There's a little bit of difference though. So in leagues, people can write in during the regular season. We check them. They have 2 business days at 5 p.m. For tournaments, they can write in. So for tournaments, we do not do write-ins. You can write somebody in if you can go online and see someone's on the roster. So if someone shows up for our spike ball tournament and they're not on the roster, if they can show you on their phone or you can look it up on the iPad that they joined the roster after we printed the score sheets, you can write them in and let them play. The reason we need them on the roster is because we cannot default somebody out of a tournament after the tournament's over. So if someone writes in at a tournament, ultimately either doesn't go to school here, doesn't have a membership, isn't eligible to join, whatever the case is, the integrity of the tournament is lost because we had an ineligible player playing. So that's why we need to see them on the electronic roster, but we can do roster additions during tournaments. You just have to see that. So if they come in and try to write in, just say, join online, show me when it's done. I'll double check it, and then you can play. Sometimes you're going to notice that a player has a line through their name on the score sheet. If that's the case, there's 3 different possibilities. So if there will be a code next to their name that's crossed out so that you know why. If it says quiz, they can play unless it's the playoffs. We don't really have this too often anymore because people join on their own. But if somehow we had to administratively put somebody on a roster and then they haven't taken the quiz yet, it's going to tell you that they haven't taken the quiz. Again, they can play unless it's the playoffs. If someone has a line through their name and it says SSPD, that means that they have been suspended. They've been suspended for a conduct issue and they cannot be in the facility. So if it's basketball, volleyball, if it's in Moby, they are not allowed to be in Moby during intramural programming. If it's on the fields, they can't watch. So someone who gets ejected gets suspended for a week. They can't come and watch their team the next week. They've already proven that they can't handle it, and so we're not going to let them be there to potentially cause more issues. If someone's name is crossed out and it says SSO in L, that means that they don't have the proper membership. So oftentimes we're going to see this on alumni and faculty, staff, and spouses. So people that are buying a day membership to Campus Rec and then buying their intramural membership, they are eligible on that day only. So they're only eligible for intramural sports when they have both memberships. So likely what happened is they were eligible, they joined the team, they played a game, they logged in later on to check when their next game was, and the system made them ineligible because it recognized they didn't have both memberships at that time. If someone has SSO in L next to their name, you need to see a receipt for that day that shows the campus recreation membership for that day, and then they can play. Okay, so those are the 3 reasons someone will be crossed out. Make sure you're communicating with officials to make sure that we're not letting anyone that should not be playing play. Again, quiz and SSO in L, they can likely play as long as within L, as long as they have the membership. But if it says SSPD, they cannot play. We'll also show you how to check on IM leagues the reason for suspension. So if someone says, "Oh, I didn't know I was suspended," you may be able to go in, and it might be a year-old suspension where they got ejected from the last basketball game this spring, and then next spring they try to write in, and they're not able to because they forgot they got ejected. They never took care of it with Adam. They're going to stay suspended until they meet with Adam. So you may see that where it's a year ago and they didn't even know, or it's a post-game ejection because of someone's actions after a game, and we're not going to run somebody down to tell them they've been ejected. They get an email from Adam about their post-game ejection. They don't check their email. They don't take care of it. They find out a year later that they were suspended for their actions. Once it comes to the playoffs, if anybody is crossed out, they cannot play no matter what. If they do, like someone that says SSO in L, they don't have a receipt, they can play under protest, but you should be able to see that receipt, send them back to the rec, and tell them if you don't have a membership for today, win or lose, your team will not advance. And so someone may be trying to save the $5 membership, whatever the case is, it's not worth it to then not advance in the playoffs. They need to go buy that membership and then show you the receipt prior to playing. Game time is forfeit time for teams that are not there. So if you have a game that starts at 6:30, you have one team there, nobody from the other team, it's a forfeit. If a team starts a game with the minimum, through ejection they drop below the minimum required to play, the game is over. If a team drops below the minimum required to play due to injury or someone had to leave for work or whatever the case is, as long as that team has a legitimate chance to still win, and especially in co-ed, they can still maintain the proper lineup, it's not a forfeit. But if a team drops below the minimum due to ejection, the game's over. If a team has somebody there, but they have not met the minimum, then they get a 5-minute grace period if their opponent gives it to them. So you have a full roster for Team A. Team B needs 2 more players to meet the minimum. Team A has the option to win by forfeit at that time, at game time. It's an option to just take the win. Team A also has the option to allow a 5-minute grace period for Team B to field the minimum number of players to start a game. Once the minimum number is there, they have to start. So if a team, let's say we're starting basketball, it's a women's game, you have 5 from Team A, you have 3 from Team B, we are starting. They've met the minimum, we have to go. But if they have 2, we will wait until they get the minimum. So this isn't a 5-minute grace period for a team to reach full strength. It's just to meet the minimum and play. We also have a concession rule. Again, all of our sports are supposed to be recreational. There are times where Team A is just head and shoulders above Team B, and it's not fun for either team. The losing team at half or anytime after that can concede a game. So if you have an indoor soccer game that's 12-0 at half, the losing team can come to the officials at half and say, we do not want to continue this game, and the game ends. If a team concedes, the score stays the exact same as does sportsmanship. It's just ending the game early for whatever reason. If the winning team chooses to concede, we will go to the forfeit score, but we will not dock sportsmanship. So we've had times where a team is up. Let's say it's in indoor soccer, a team is winning. One of their players gets injured. It's a pretty big injury, and they're shaken up, and they don't want to continue. They can choose to leave. They can choose to go to the hospital with that person, or just leave. But they can't take the win if they're leaving early. Sportsmanship is part of our responsible participation, right? We're going to hold people accountable to their actions. So we have team expectations. We have playoff. There's playoff implications to a low sportsmanship. Everyone starts at a 3 and either earns their way to stay there or earns their way down. So don't let officials just give 3s to teams that don't deserve 3s. Have a conversation with them about, okay, what'd you see? Why do you think it was a 3? Are you sure? If you don't agree with a sportsmanship rating, talk to the officials about it. See if you can get it changed. If ultimately the officials want to stick with something and you have knowledge because you were standing on the sideline, you heard the bench say certain things and stuff like that, you can lower it, but you need to have definitive knowledge that it should be lower and you can lower it. Otherwise, we should be using this as an opportunity to teach our officials what a 2 looks like, what a 1 looks like, what a 0 looks like. And as a reminder, on the score sheet at the bottom of every score sheet, it tells you your criteria. So if you have an officiating crew, say, yeah, they got 3s, read that, and you disagree, read them the description. Say, okay, did team A, did they meet these criteria? And read them the 3. No, okay, let's read the 2. Did they meet that? Yes or no? Okay, if they didn't, read the 1 to them. So really work with them to give them the ability to give the appropriate sportsmanship rating. Again, here are those. I'm not going to read them to you. You all as officials used them. But as a manager, again, we need to be acutely aware of what these are and then make sure that our officials are holding teams accountable. We're not letting teams into the playoffs that shouldn't be there. We're rewarding good teams for good sportsmanship. We're docking teams that earn lower sportsmanship. So if you want to, go ahead, pause this, read through this, and this is also on every score sheet that you'll take in next year. We also need to track our unsporting fouls. Every sport's going to have them, whether it's a red card, yellow card, whether it's an unsporting flag in football, whether it's technical in basketball. We need to track these. And so if you know that these have been given out in a game, when you're checking the score sheet, make sure that the total is tallied. In the office, we track these, and anyone that receives 3 in a season is suspended for the remainder of the season. So it's really important we get the numbers for these and log them appropriately so that we have a count moving forward. Once players are ejected, they're now yours to fill out a form with and handle. Oftentimes, our participants who are ejected calm down a little bit when they get to a manager because they're not mad at you. They're mad at the official who ejected them. And so sometimes conflict is easier to deal with as a manager, and sometimes it's not because someone's so mad at the official that then they're going to be mad at you for telling him to leave. They want to tell you how terrible the official is, so on and so forth. So intramural officials and staff reserve the right to eject any individual, team, or spectator who involves themselves in a physical altercation or who consistently exhibits unsporting behavior or other actions not appropriate for campus recreation environment. We want to empower our officials to eject participants that earn an ejection. If we have an official who we haven't empowered, they're not there yet, they're not confident enough yet. There's a lot of times where officials second guess themselves because they don't have confidence in the sport that they're working, and so they're going to have a really long leash and let someone abuse them for a game because they think, well, maybe they're right. Maybe I did miss that. Maybe I missed the other one. Maybe I missed all. Maybe they're 100% right and I'm 100% wrong. Work with those officials to get them to the point where they can eject on their own, but know as a manager, you have the right to eject someone and remove someone who should not be there. We need to be holding people accountable. We need to be working with our officials to make sure that they are holding people accountable as well. If an individual receives 2 unsporting fouls in the game, they are ejected. If a team receives 3 unsportings, that game is over and it should be a forfeit. Teams can protest, so they can protest the rule misapplication or misinterpretation. So we are never going to allow a judgment call, so like whether a goal went in or not in soccer. That is not reviewable, but the rule is. So we give a direct kick for an offside violation in soccer. Someone can protest that and say, no, that should be indirect. If it's a rule violation, team can call timeout immediately. Say, I want to protest. The official gets you. You rule on the protest. Whether you make the decision. If you need to look in the rule book, look in the rule book. If you need to look in the rules packet, do that. Our packet is a summary of rules. There's always a rule book that most of the time there's a rule book that we fall back to for that. So like in flag football, we have a rules packet. If you can't find a rule in there, then look in the rule book for the rule. If you can't find anything, make a decision or call me and we'll make a decision together. If we uphold the protest, that team loses that timeout and there's no more protest. If you've talked to me or if you've made a decision and the team still wants to protest, they can submit a written protest. We also have eligibility protests. So if a team believes that someone on the other team is not eligible to play, whether they're a varsity athlete, whether they're no longer a student and they don't have a membership, whatever the case is, that needs to be done in the first half of a game unless they didn't check in until the second half. So first half for the protest, the eligibility protest, and our concession rule is the end of the first set in volleyball, before the end of the third inning. So the third inning is halftime in softball and kickball, and the end of the third game in dodgeball. So use those as eligibility has to be protested before that. Concession has to be asked for after that. Our alcohol and substance use policies are pretty straightforward. If it's a participant, when you suspect it, talk to the captain immediately. We have the language in our policies and procedures that we reserve the right to remove participants and spectators from remaining at intramural events who appear to be under the influence of alcohol or drugs. So whether someone's of legal age or not is not, it doesn't factor into any of our decisions. If someone is obviously under the influence of anything, they need to leave. Make sure that you're doing an ejection incident report for that, trying to get their name and information. At least the captain can help you get that information if you can't get it from that person. But we cannot have anyone under the influence around our programming. And likewise, any employee that shows up impaired, you need to send them home. We'll figure out what we need to do as far as putting someone onto their field or their court, trying to call someone and get them in. But ultimately, no one can be under the influence of anything, regardless of what age, how old they are. Inclement weather. And so this will come up late fall usually, and then pretty much all of spring semester when we're outside. We will make a decision by mid-afternoon as a program. So Adam and I, on our sport club counterparts, will walk the fields if we're worried about playability, whether that's snow coverage, water, standing water, all those things. If we make the decision to keep the fields open, then it falls to you as the manager if the fields become unsafe. Right? So that's back to your job description of making sure that everything is safe. If we have standing water, we will likely cancel. If you are ever going to call a night that was approved by Adam or I, please call me first. If I don't answer, call Adam. Have a discussion with us. Tell us what the fields look like. We're going to have a conversation before we just cancel, and then you tell us that you've called the night, because likely we won't have enough time to replay that. So if we can at all play, we will play. But if it becomes unsafe, we're going to make the call to cancel that, or to potentially postpone or cancel that night. Okay. If you are in a weather delay, so oftentimes what happens is the fields look like they're wet, but it's raining. We get pulled off the fields because of lightning. We are likely going to try to go back, right? So Adam and I are going to look at the radar. We're going to see what the weather looks like. If it looks like we're going to get if the weather's going to lift, we will just push everything that night. So you might get done a little bit later, but we'll still get all the games in. When you call the game for that event, whether it's, let's just say it's lightning, tell all the teams, stay close. Either bring them with you to the sheds, go into the recs and tell them to go to the lobby. Tell them they should not leave unless they talk to you as the managers. The manager is the only person that's going to make the call whether we're going to go back or not. There have been times in the past where teams will leave. We will then resume. They won't be there. They will forfeit, and they'll be upset and say, well, I talked to someone, and they said we're done. It needs to come from you, not the officials or anything like that. And so make sure that teams know if they are not there to restart when we restart, we'll give them a short warm-up period. And then if they're not there, then it will be a forfeit to get your permission. Oftentimes, managers in the past have gotten phone numbers of the captain. They've written them on the score sheets. That really helps. Those are also available on IM Leagues if you need it to try to call people. So sometimes, especially with Lightning, some teams will go into Moby, some will go into the rec, some will go sit under the canopy by the shed. So and then some will go sit in their cars. So a lot of times teams scatter and they're not readily available for us to restart. But just whenever we postpone, tell them ideally we're going to restart. Don't go far. We'll let you know when we do that. You all know about our jewelry policies. You have enforced them as officials, but basically for contact sports, jewelry has to be covered or removed. So whether that's tape, whether it's sweatbands, however someone covers it, they can't have any jewelry. And then for non-contact sports, only dangly jewelry is not allowed. So people could still wear rings in volleyball or stud earrings and things like that. But for the most part, we want all jewelry taken off or uncovered, and each sport rules packet will dictate the jewelry policy for that sport. We also have requirements for closed-toed shoes for all of our sports except for sand volleyball, water polo, spike ball. Those are the only ones I can think of off the top of my head where shoes are optional. We don't allow hard-brimmed hats unless it's softball, and bandanas. Actually, that should read bandanas are not allowed. Bandanas have a knot in the back of them and to be tied, and that becomes a injury risk, potential concussion. We also don't allow any metal cleats for any of our cleated sports. No metal caps, no metal tips, no metal studs. For sports where teams are sharing the field, so football, basketball, soccer, we need a team to be in the same color or similar colored shirts with numbers on them. If they don't have that, we will provide the pennies for them. And then teams like kickball, softball, they can wear whatever because it's obvious who's on offense, who's on defense. We will provide a game ball for every game. If a team wants to use their own, like let's say in softball, in soccer, a team wants to use their own soccer ball, as long as the other team agrees, they can play with that. With flag football, teams can use their own ball, but it has to meet the requirements of the sport. So for men's, it has to be a regular size ball. And then for co-ed or women's, it has to be a youth or a regular. We need to keep track of our equipment. So for our major sports, there will only be one game ball in each bag. That means if a team wants to warm up, they need to go to the rec to get a ball to warm up with, or you hold their ID while they're warming up. This is because a lot of our balls disappear. We've actually had footballs that are forgotten by someone who stole them. So they steal it. The reason we know it was stolen is because they tried to scrub the Sharpie that says I am sports on the ball off, and then they either left it because they couldn't get the Sharpie all the way off, or they forgot the ball the next week. So please do your best to help us out. We will have to offer less sports if we have to buy more equipment. So naturally, we buy new equipment every year to replace old equipment, but we don't want to buy new equipment to replace old equipment and replace stolen equipment. General staff expectations, again, you are enforcing these. Now that you are a manager, my assumption is we don't have to have conversations about you being on time and things like that. You're going to be the example no matter what position you're working that night or if you're playing. But this is what we need to hold our officials to. This is the expectations we have of officials, is that they're on time, that they hustle, they listen and respond to feedback, that they're professional while they're on the clock when wearing their stripes. And then that they're acting the right way when they're either participating or watching. Again, the uniform we've already talked about, so I'm not going to read it again. Anyone out of uniform needs a shift doc, and you all need to be in uniform. If you all violate any of our policies, whether it's uniform, whether it's late, whatever the case is, my expectation is that you give me a shift doc for yourself. So couldn't find parking, you end up getting there 10 minutes late, I should have a shift doc for you being late written by you in my inbox to relay that information. That way, when you write it for someone else, you can say, hey, I do the same thing for me. Anyone that's late, this happens. Next, we're going to cover our emergency action plan. So as an official, you were pretty much removed from this. Anytime there was an injury, you just got the manager, right? So now you need to understand as the manager who's being brought to an injury or anything that falls within our emergency action plan that you're ready to respond. These are our codes for our emergency action plan. These stickers are also on every single radio, so you don't have to memorize them, but it's good to know the ones that we're going to use the most. Most often we're going to use red, purple, or blue, right? So life-threatening emergency, so that's anytime that we're going to call EMS. A lot of times we have lower leg injuries where someone wants us to call the ambulance, they want us to call 911. Even though that's not necessarily life-threatening, we're still going to use a code red if we have an ambulance coming to a facility so that our rec soup knows. You may have an incident where you have a fight, where you have a blow up between two teams where you need help from the rec soup. And then the severe weather is going to be any time that we have to clear the fields because they're too wet, they're too snowy, or Thorguard goes off, meaning that there's lightning that's close enough that it's an issue. So those are the main three that you're going to radio so that the rec soup knows what's going on. We have AEDs in every facility that we operate in. And so AEDs are throughout the rec center and then all of our locations that we participate in. So in the facility, and this is just, we only do this a couple times a year where we're in the facility, but it's still good to know where they're at. There's an unalarmed one at the service center and the equipment desk. On our fields, there's one in the training room, which is unalarmed. And then there's one in the MAC, which we do program in, and that's alarmed. So as soon as you open that box and pull it out, an alarm's going to go off. And then as far as in Moby and the IPF, in Moby it's located on the east, on the wall east of the equipment desk, and that's alarmed. And so, like, if you were to walk in the main hallway and take a right to go into the pool, it's right there. And then in the IPF, it's on the west wall of the turf area near the drinking fountain, also alarmed. So any of these alarmed ones, as soon as you pull them out, CSU PD is going to get a notification. We still need to call 911 and let them know that we have that emergency. But it's going. So when you tell an official, go get me the AED, as soon as they pull it, EMS is going to be notified, but we should also be calling as well. Okay. The image on the left of the yellow box, those are our unalarmed AEDs that we just grab and go. And then the ones on the right are the alarmed ones. As soon as you open that and pull it out, the alarm goes off. When we call EMS, we need to know the access point, right? So we are calling an ambulance and we need to be able to direct them to where we're at. So sometimes there's going to be especially on the fields, there's going to be an access point that's closer to where you're at, whether you're on 1 through 3 versus 7 or 8. And so you need to know those. Like in an emergency, you need to be able to rattle those off so that we can get our advanced care to us as fast as possible. So when we're on the field, give them the streets, give them the intersection, give them where you're closest. So Shields is on the west side of us, South Drive and Hughes Way. It's listed both ways. Whatever you say, it will be, the ambulance will be able to get to us. So if we're on the south end of Field 3, we want to say we're on. We want to be able to tell them that South Drive is going to be the closest access point near the bathrooms on the field. Meridian Avenue is on the east, so that's the road that buses and CSU vehicles drive on, but nobody else does. That's that closed road in between us and the LSC. And then Moby Drive is that the street on the back side of Moby, in between the fields and Moby. And so you're going to use that if you're on 7 and 8, just on the other side of the softball field. But we need to know those locations and what corner we're on. The other thing is, if we're ever calling 911, you need to send an official to the access point. So wherever you're going to tell the ambulance they should come, send an official to that spot and say there's going to be someone in stripes ready to direct the ambulance to us. In the IPF, give the specific door information. Oftentimes they go to the front door, but if going to the garage door is going to be easiest, go ahead, pop the garage door, send an official out into the alley, tell them they're going to take the alley, and then the official will tell them where to go once the ambulance gets there. And then again, in Moby, 99% of the time we're going to be in the intramural gym, or we're going to be in the pool, and we're going to be able to tell them that's where we're at. But sometimes we're going to be in the arena for championships. Then we're going to want to send someone upstairs to be able to get the ambulance when they get there. We have fire alarms and extinguishers throughout the building. You'll get our manual, which will have that map. We, again, won't be programming in the facility all that often, but it's still important to know where these things are if we are in there. To activate our fire alarms, you're just going to push in and pull them down. And then a fire extinguisher, you remove it from the storage case, you pull the pin, you aim it towards the base of the fire, and you spray back and forth through the base of the fire. Accident reports are on the iPad. You're going to fill those out through Connect 2. You will all have access to that, and you will all get a login for that once we get back to campus. And so we are filling these out for green, which are non-life-threatening injuries, and red, which are life-threatening injuries. The only difference is whether EMS was rolled or not. But you're going to fill out this form. The participant needs to help you fill it out. We need their information. And so there's a full field. We will go over this in person so that you know what these look like. You're going to carry these in your either in your fanny packs or your sling bags. Anytime that we use our first aid equipment from the fanny pack or sling bag, we need that form. So if you're giving out a Band-Aid, if you're giving out gauze because someone's bleeding, if we're giving out ice, anything from that to we're calling EMS because whatever just happened we can't handle on our own, we should be filling out that that accident report on it so that we have that information. Those are CSU property. They also can be court documents. So we don't want to infer anything. We want to say exactly what happened. We don't diagnose any injuries. So even if the participant says, it's my ACL, I've done it twice already in this knee, I know it's my ACL, we are going to report a knee injury because we don't have the training to diagnose that. So if someone rolled their ankle, you're going to say an ankle injury. We're not going to say sprained ankle. So we are going to describe the injury and not diagnose it because they could be legal documents in the future. And then if someone asks you, like they're injured, they're filling out the form and say, can I get a copy of this? They need to contact the Office of Risk Management for the university, and that the university can give them their form, but we cannot do it on our own. So anytime you have an injury, if you're dealing with blood, if a player is actively bleeding or was bleeding, they need to get cleaned up. We can't have any blood or dried blood on a jersey, shorts, whatever they're playing in. And so you will help stop the bleeding. So we will go over all of our bloodborne pathogens procedures and how to protect yourself in these in person at the end of the summer. But you will help with that. You'll be giving the participant gauze, Band-Aids, things like that. So player safety is our first priority. The official should come get you if there's an injury that you have to handle, and then you will take it from there. And then again, if staff is injured, again, fill out that form so that that's the first step of workers' compensation, and let them know that they do qualify for that and that I will be emailing them. If there's a major injury, so this is life-threatening or we're calling 911. When you call 911, the first thing you need to say is, I'm calling from CSU. Okay? That, when you call, you're going to go to the Larimer County 911. They'll then send you to campus 911 call center so that that individual will help the emergency services get to where they're supposed to be. So first thing is I'm calling from CSU, and then what happened, is the victim conscious, alert, or breathing, the gender, age, if you know those things, if there's a previous history of medical alert, and then the nearest access point. Those are all the things that we are giving to EMS, and then we are staying on the phone until medical arrives, or we're giving care, and those two can happen at the same time. Use your officials to, if there's a crowd gathering, to try to do crowd control, to get to the access point. Use your officials as you need through this whole process. Okay. And then if you call a code red, you're going to call it and the rec suit will show up. So you're not going to be on your own until then. If we are in a facility where we have two IM managers for the same sport, like basketball, football, the second manager should respond as well. Concussions happen in sports. They're part of sports. We understand that. Again, we cannot diagnose anything. We don't have the knowledge or ability to diagnose head injuries. So we need to know some of the danger signs of them, and then we as an intramural program can pull anyone out of programming and not let them go back in. So if you think someone has a concussion, you can pull them out. Again, we're not diagnosing it and saying you have a concussion. We're filling out an injury report and saying that there was an injury to the head, and we are not allowing that person to go back in. Even if they say, I'll sign whatever you need me to, I just want to play, whatever the case is, risking another head injury isn't worth it for intramural sports. It's not worth it for really any sport. And so because we can't diagnose it, we cannot give someone a return to play protocol or anything like that. So danger signs are one pupil is larger than the other. Someone's drowsy or they're not able to wake up. They have a headache that gets worse and does not go away. They have slurred speech, weakness, numbness, decreased coordination. They are vomiting or nauseous. They convulse or go into seizure. There's unusual behavior, increased confusion, restlessness and agitation, or a loss of consciousness. So if any of these are observed, we're pulling that participant out and saying, for your safety, we're not going to let you go back in. We advise you to go to a doctor. We've had people lose consciousness in our program. We have had someone go into a seizure after a hit to the head. And we've had someone who lost consciousness on the field get combative and want to play again because we were trying to hold them out, but they didn't remember losing consciousness, so they didn't think it happened. So all very few and far between. I would say 95% of our shifts are going to go by fine. These are the things we need to know for when those things don't go as planned. Anytime that this happens, offer EMS. If someone loses consciousness, that is their consent to call EMS. If we have anyone in our program lose consciousness, call right away. We don't know what's going on, and we need someone there who's going to have more advanced knowledge than us. Incident reports are going to be filled out again on the iPad for anything ejection related, or if someone's reports that something was stolen from the sideline, whatever the case is, we're going to use Connect2 to fill that out. And then you're just going to fill in the fields that are required to be able to submit that. It's really important. Again, these can be legal documents, so we're not inferring, we're not guessing, we are just writing exactly what happened. We're not putting emotion. So if someone was ejected, we're not going to say, yeah, they acted like an idiot the whole game. We're going to say they complained. These are the things they said. It was consistent throughout the game. We're going to write exactly what happened and not our opinion of what happened. Like, this is a terrible person. They're always an issue, blah, blah, blah. We're not putting that in there. It's just for that game, what happened. So that then Adam can follow up. And if it does become something that goes to conduct for the university or escalates larger than that, it's just fact that's in that form. Weather, I've already talked about it a little bit throughout this, but again, we have a Thorgard system outside. So if we're not just looking at the water saturation of the field and the playability and the safety of that, if there's lightning in the area, Thorgard's going to go off. You're going to hear a large blast for 15 seconds from the building. We have a system on top that tells us that there's lightning in the area. We have to clear the field immediately. Teams shouldn't sit there on the field in their player bench areas. They should seek shelter immediately, and we will restart whenever at the earliest convenience. That system will also let us know when we're all clear. When that weather cell has moved past and there's no more risk for lightning in the area, we will get 3 5-second blasts letting us know we're good to go. There's also an app on the iPad that you can check this if we're in all clear, if we are in caution. We are only clearing the field when we're in red alert, but you can use the iPad to kind of gauge where we're at with that. But if Thorgard hasn't gone off yet and you think lightning is too close, you can call it. You have that ability. If you think it's unsafe to be on the fields, whether Thorgard went off or not, you can call it. Call the rec soup, say code blue on the fields, we're clearing it, we're good. thank you so much for your time and attention to this presentation. If you have any lingering questions, please feel free to shoot me an email. I will either answer those, or I will compile all the questions and make sure that we get you all answers when we do get to meet and debrief this and talk about it. So again, thank you so much, and I look forward to the next step in this development program and talking about this presentation. Again, if you have questions, let me know. Thanks.